Right. Sorry, folks. We had a little bit of technical issues, so hopefully people will be coming back on. But if you did join us right at the 12:01 mark, I did kick this off with the presentation. I'm just going to restate it. So thank you for coming back with us. So like I said, this is Aparo's Nonprofit Bites and Insights. These are our webinar series that we provide for our nonprofit communities. Today, we are talking about telephone and network connectivity. We have two amazing speakers with us who are going to help us navigate this. A few housekeeping details. We are recording this webinar. Hopefully we won't get kicked off again. So I will be sharing this particular recording out to upload it up to our website as well as our YouTube channel. But all of you attending live with us today will receive a follow-up email from me that will give you that direct link to the recording so you can check back in, as well as a copy of the slide deck. Q&A and chat box are available for to use at any time, so feel free to drop in your questions, drop in your comments throughout the presentation. Really quickly, as a reminder, Aparo, what we do is we support other nonprofits with anything technology, any technology needs, challenges, questions. We are here to help answer those. You can see here we offer a range of services to try and meet the needs of the nonprofits. So if or when you decide you'd like to access our services, just know that you'll meet one-on-one with one of our tech therapists to talk about your need, and they'll make sure that you get connected with the right service. So like I said, aparo.org/nonprofits, that's where you'll find that request form. If you'd like to stay updated on Aparo's programs, the best way is to subscribe to our email list if you aren't already. My email address is also there, so feel free to reach out if you do have any questions. I'm happy to answer them. And then finally, if you like what we do, please consider writing a short Google review. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and go ahead and turn it over to Christine and Alyssa.
Thank you very, very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. We're very excited to talk to you about connectivity and voice as it relates to the nonprofits and how to ensure that you are paying only for what you really need. Before we dive into our topic today, I'd like to introduce myself and my partner, Alyssa. My name is Christine, and I started in this industry in 2009. After being in telecom under other reps since 2004, I took a leap of faith and went out on my own so I could stay home full-time with my children and still contribute financially. New to my team is my daughter, Alyssa. Alyssa worked in recruiting for 5 years and recently decided to take a leap out of corporate to join my company, which makes me extremely excited. Telecom Made Simple is a complimentary white glove service for businesses seeking support with technology needs. We have partnerships with over 300 providers globally, and we help our clients determine the provider that best fits those needs, keeping functionality, customer service, and cost top of mind. We are an extension of your technology team without being on your payroll. I am going to pass this presentation over to Alyssa, and we both look forward to addressing your concerns or questions at the end of this presentation.
Hi, good afternoon. I want to make this presentation as interactive as possible, so please take this time to pull up Slido. Slido is an interactive platform that allows presenters like myself to create polls and questions to help keep our audience engaged. There will be several questions throughout this presentation, and you will have the option to answer polls and questions anonymously. So if you just take your phone out and scan this QR code, it will bring you to our first question. How many of you have experienced dropped internet? I know that this is typically really difficult for a lot of our customers. Unfortunately, internet sometimes is a little spotty, and so a lot of customers tend to have this. So I will be reviewing the poll answers as you all vote, and it looks like we have 3 votes so far, so definitely keep voting. Let's see. So it looks like many of you have experienced drop internet often. So we're going to talk throughout this presentation to talk about how to combat that, what other solutions you may have to, not have your internet drop so often. I'm going to kick off our discussion with connectivity. Connectivity is the ability to link and communicate with other computer systems, electronic devices, software, or the internet. Before any other consideration, you need to know how your network, devices, and programs are going to talk to each other. It needs to be fast enough, flexible enough, redundant enough, and cost efficient. Connectivity is the start of the conversation that leads to all other solutions you'll require to meet your needs. I wanted to put in another poll, another Slido. So if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and scan that. The next question is available live right now. What internet providers are available in your area? So it should be the question that you see. If you go ahead and scan that QR code, I have the poll up and waiting for votes to come in. It is open-ended, but just curious to see what providers you're seeing in your area. So it looks like we have Spectrum, T-Mobile. So far, there's only 2 responses I've received. But Spectrum is a big one in the Charlotte area. So if you are logging in from the Charlotte area, Spectrum is a big provider. I also am seeing AT&T. They're also another option as well, another large carrier. With all that being said, sometimes people don't realize that in the Charlotte area or wherever you're located, that there are other options for internet than the big carriers that everyone hears about in that area. So we'll go ahead and talk further on connectivity and what you need to look for and what needs to be considered. So this is a list of what needs to be considered when seeking connectivity. And it does seem daunting, but I'm going to break it down for you. All things being equal, budget is usually driven by 2 variables, bandwidth requirements and what's accessible. The more you want, the faster you need it, may limit your choices and increase your costs. Often, infrastructure, what's available, and proximity to service play a heavy role. Lead times for hardwired connections tend to be longer, while wireless and satellite are extremely quick to set up, but not the long-term solution. Budget always plays a major role when deciding what internet options best meet your needs, but no, you have options. There are, like I've mentioned, there are many different options to consider when you're deciding on connectivity. For most of our nonprofits, we typically consider cable internet, ABF, and mobile internet as they are most budget friendly. So as you take a look at this chart that I have up on the screen, you can see this table that we put together that shows you at a quick glance the pros and cons of the type of internet associated with the cost. So as you can see, cable internet is definitely the least expensive of the options. That's going to be your basic coax, broadband. Most of our nonprofits, like I mentioned, have cable internet. ABF is a really great option because it is a fiber-like product, meaning it's symmetrical. So your upload and your download speeds are symmetrical, the same upload and the same download. So if ABF is available in your area, that is something that we always recommend because you're going to get strong, fast, reliable internet with a lower cost. So if it's available, we always recommend that. So something to consider when you're looking into connectivity. And then, the other one we recommend is mobile internet. So those are your wireless internet, your LG, your 5G. Typically, this is something better for large cities because you can have unlimited. So once you get into 4G wireless, you do not have the option for unlimited plans, which could increase your bill. So we try to stick with that 5G unlimited. The bandwidth available highly depends on your location. We'll start by learning what your typical usage will be and how much speed will be needed at any given time. Are you looking for a low demand scenario with light browsing, checking email, or more intensive file sharing, video streaming, conferencing, or resource-heavy cloud applications? How many devices will be operating at once? These are all questions you need to answer to understand what speeds will be required to operate your business successfully. Both the physical location of your business and where your current applications reside may dictate the type of service, the lead time to get it installed, and your options for providers. Denser urban areas may offer more options, meaning only the last part of the run needs to be built out. Depending on the situation, a little extra effort or expense to engage a preferred provider can be worth it, especially based on the location of your critical applications. On-premise, cloud, and hybrid applications all have different bandwidth requirements to function and are an important consideration for connectivity options. Dedicated with a guaranteed versus shared service or broadband. So you could see on this chart here, I kind of weigh out the pros and cons. But data connection is much like a utility, acting as a pipe through which the data flows. The bigger the pipe, the more data can flow. The more taps into the pipe, the more data capacity is being diverted. With a shared service, you may notice drops during peak usage. I know a few of you have answered that other poll and said that you often have dropped internet. So what that tells me is that most likely you're on that broadband connection. With a dedicated service, you get every last bit you pay for. You will also receive a service level agreement, or SLA, for speed and uptime, plus faster response times to resolve any issues. As you can see, the pros of dedicated internet heavily outweigh the cons. However, it's the high cost that typically deters our nonprofit customers, making broadband the obvious choice. So even though dedicated internet is more expensive, we don't typically, as I mentioned, recommend that for our nonprofits just due to the cost. We are looking at hundreds of dollars a month typically for a dedicated internet. Now, if you are very well funded and you are working with a lot of technology, that I definitely would recommend that to consider that. But typically we need to go with a broadband internet, which also can work great with a few additional add-ons, which we'll cover later in the presentation. So now this brings to another question. Do you have dedicated internet or broadband internet? So definitely want to hear what you're thinking. I came up with my own conclusions and my predictions, but interested to see who has what. So we've had two responses so far, and both were that you have broadband, which is definitely what I suspected based on the answers to the previous questions. So thank you for answering those. Like I said, broadband is not a bad internet connection. I'm not saying that by any means. It's just of the two, it does tend to give a little bit more issues just because it is not dedicated like fiber is. But we're going to, like I said, talk about how to combat that. Some solutions are plug and play, from setting up a dish or antenna to pre-configured cellular-enabled phones, tablets, laptops, or specialty devices, and require very little in the way of lead time. Other solutions may require scheduling a technician to bring the connection from the nearest hub to the desired location. Overall, the more lead time, the more options available. When possible, also allocate lots of lead time to allow for unexpected delays. This is not like hooking up your home cable. Even fast installs can run into roadblocks, like hardware inventory shortages, or even the requirements of FCC approval. Backups can be quick, but more often not a viable long-term solution. Sometimes you only need connectivity for a short period of time. This could be for a special event, an alternative location, or while waiting for the full deployment of a different chosen method of connection. Interestingly, sometimes wireless and satellite solutions work so well a hardwired connection is never needed. There are even providers that specialize in offering temporary services. So these temporary services, and back to the chart I had showed in the beginning, this is all talking about that mobile internet connection. So those 5G, LTE, 4G devices. So these can act as a backup, and depending on how you have them set up with your internet, your broadband internet, they can be really useful. So if you are in a city and you decide to go with a broadband connection due to cost, and then add a wireless backup, if it's 5G, it's unlimited. You can get an unlimited, which do tend to be more expensive, but then you never have to worry about overages. And going into detail on how the backup devices work exactly and failover would be a whole nother topic. So if you have more questions on temporary services, on backups for your internet, definitely feel free to reach out. But like I said, we would definitely not have time to fit all of that information in this presentation, just going over connectivity and voice. So one solution may not do it all. A good question I like to ask my customers is, what does your nonprofit look like without internet connection? Often we hear they would need to send their employees home to continue their day. They would lose money, donations, or even that the nonprofit would be negatively impacted by even a disturbance in connectivity for a few hours. If your nonprofit is similar, you should absolutely invest in a backup device. You can use a pooled data plan that can be used across multiple locations, allowing your nonprofit to be redundant across all sites. We highly recommend that all our customers also have at least a basic firewall to protect them from cyber attacks. Again, definitely something to consider when you're considering internet options. I had a nonprofit just the other day, and they told me that they have to unplug their firewall from their internet because their firewall slows down their internet so much. But when you are considering your internet strength of what you need, please make sure that you're getting a bandwidth that's strong enough to withstand what your firewall will need, because it is really important. Even if you have just a basic firewall to protect yourself, that'll help protect the privacy of whomever you're helping, and also any type of financials that you keep on your computer. So we definitely don't want anyone hacking into that. And I think a lot of what's nerve-wracking is a lot of people overlook the cybersecurity because they're like, oh, I'm a nonprofit and I'm small. But a lot of times those smaller nonprofits, they don't have the IT teams, and I think that makes them more susceptible to cyber attacks, just because they're a demographic, I guess, that doesn't usually consider that the importance of cybersecurity, because a lot of times we are so focused on budget. But some cybersecurity, you can add that for less than $100 a month. But it just depends on how you're set up, really. But just something to keep in mind. So let's take a few minutes to address any questions that you have regarding connectivity prior to moving forward to our final topic, which is voice. So I do want to open it up to anyone that has questions. Feel free to shout them out, or I don't know if you have anything in the chat.
I don't have anything in the chat yet.
Okay. Yeah, I know that was a lot of information. So if y'all have questions about connectivity specifically, definitely let me know. We will go and move on to voice, and we'll break again after that for questions, but just wanted to break it in two because I know that was a lot of information. Okay. Well, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions yet, so we will move on. To start our conversation about voice, please answer the following poll. What type of phone system are you currently using? So I'm really curious about this before we get started on this topic. Definitely to hear what kind of phone systems everyone is using right now. I feel like phones have changed pretty drastically over the last several years, so definitely interested. So we've gotten a few votes. Okay, it looks like an on-premise PBX is most common. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like an on-premise PBX is what everyone on this call has. So during this topic, we'll dive deeper into the different types of phone services. We will discuss the pros and cons, associated costs, and what you need to consider when researching voice providers. So for those of you who have that on-premise PBX, we'll talk about that. We're talking about that right now. So for decades, landlines, or plain old telephone services, also known as POTS, have been the reliable connection method across businesses throughout the country. In the 21st century, new superior technology combined with exorbitant costs to maintain the old infrastructure means POTS have reached their end of life. Major carriers have already set dates to retire their POTS support, thus increasing their phone costs astronomically. We have seen some landlines as high as $250 a line. And actually, I have a nonprofit right now that told me that she's paying $435 for one landline. This is not a reasonable nor viable option for any business. If you have a POTS line, we recommend you start looking into POTS replacement options soon. The good news is there are tons of options available in the market today that will be reliable and cost-effective. Although newer than landlines, premise-based systems are also considered to be dated and have less flexibility and limited capabilities compared to newer voice systems. With an on-premise private branch exchange, or PBX, all critical hardware and equipment is housed on-site, which means you would be responsible for all repair and upgrade costs. If your phone stopped working, you would either need to have IT staff who are on site and well-versed in your on-premise system, schedule a technician with your provider to come on site, or hire a third-party technician who will typically be quite costly. So on-premise phones, like I said, there are just new options now that are a lot more cost-effective, and they allow you to get a lot more help. And we're going to go into them, but don't be worried if you have an on-premise PBX. This is not to alarm you. It is just to educate you. They work, but there are just other newer options available, which we're going to go over. Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP, is a technology that allows you to make voice calls using a broadband internet connection instead of a regular or analog phone line. VoIP has continued to increase in popularity as broadband internet and high-speed data networking equipment has become more readily accessible, and due to advances in software development that allow VoIP providers to create complex and highly advanced phone capabilities. There are several reasons many nonprofits are moving away from traditional phone services and towards VoIP service. For starters, many VoIP systems are simple to install, some as easy as plug and play. This becomes very beneficial when you have no one specialized in IT at your nonprofit. More often than not, the carrier will assign your nonprofit a project manager who will walk you through the install. Who will walk you through the installation step by step at no extra cost. These phones allow fully customizable call routing, hunt groups, ring groups, and more. This allows your nonprofit to figure out what works best for your day-to-day operations. Not only is VoIP typically easier to install, but it is also a more robust voice system that can support a variety of features from simple call forwarding to voice recording and AI. So we actually worked with a business previously, and they were a boot company. They sold boots in a retail store, and they switched to a VoIP phone system and were interested in adding artificial intelligence. So this artificial intelligence in their voice system was able to identify when people were calling in, what were the most asked questions. So they were able to pull up, using the artificial intelligence built into their VoIP system, they were able to pull up the statistics of how many people called in and asked to order a specific type of boot. So they realized that they were missing out on hundreds of sales due to not stocking enough of this particular square-toed boot. So they started purchasing more inventory for this specific boot, and their sales increased by 30%. The reason I'm sharing this with you is so that you can understand and get a picture for how that AI can help support and maybe benefit your nonprofit. I don't know how your nonprofit is set up, but depending on what you do, this could be a beneficial tool to incorporate if your budget permits. Another benefit of voice over IP is not only can you use your desk phone to make calls, we can also call directly through your computer or your mobile phone and appear as if you're calling from your office. These phones also allow eFax, video calling, and SMS. Because VoIP phones work over your internet, many providers created add-on solutions to integrate with internal messaging platforms such as Microsoft Teams. Despite VoIP phones being much newer, more intricate, and advanced phone systems, compared to traditional voice options we have discussed previously, they also tend to cost less as well. So VoIP is a really good option. They have voice carriers that have the most basic VoIP systems where you can get a really low rate per phone. But then they also have VoIP providers who specialize, like I said, in all of the artificial intelligence, the voice recording. They're really interesting phones. And if you have not experienced or looked into VoIP phones, I highly recommend you demoing a few options, because like I said, with the cost of these phones compared to the traditional phone systems, they come in a better cost and they're just more convenient. You don't have to have a separate cell phone and desk phone. You can operate everything off of a mobile app on your phone. So I can take call. I have a VoIP phone and I can take calls whether I'm out of the office, running to an appointment, wherever I am, I can take a call and it looks like I'm answering from my desk. You can send text messages all through an app on your phone or from your desktop, or like I said, your actual desk phone. And oftentimes we actually get free phones for our nonprofits. So not only do the phones cost less monthly per user, but sometimes as a nonprofit, we can negotiate free physical phones that you can put on your desk. So definitely all really good options to consider when looking into voice. So let's take a minute to discuss the following Slido question. What features do you look for when considering a new phone? So, some of those features that we just discussed, like AI, voice recording, are you looking for text messages? Are you interested in call routing? Also Teams integration, or maybe you have another chat platform. Just curious to see what features you look for. Okay, text messages. Okay, awesome. Let's see if anyone else has some answers. Okay, the SMS, so text messaging, great. Okay, so it looks like we have a few SMS. Answering the phones out of office, where we have text messages. Looks like we have call routing. And it looks like we also have Microsoft Teams integration. Okay, awesome. So that brings us to our next slide. Many voice providers integrate with Microsoft Teams, but there are 4 distinct options you need to consider before finding a provider that best meets your needs. So if you are interested in Microsoft Teams integration, these slides are definitely ones that you should pay attention to. So the first way is called Microsoft Teams Calling Plan. This is directly through Teams and is the simplest and quickest way to start using Teams as your primary voice method. But we do not typically recommend this option for a few reasons. Often the cost associated with going directly with Microsoft Teams is higher than a third-party voice provider. You will also have minimal support when issues arise and will need to call Microsoft directly for support. And unfortunately, large providers just do not have the best customer service and often have really long wait times. I have heard nightmare stories about people going direct, not just with Microsoft, just direct with large carriers, right? Have you ever called your voice provider and you've gone direct, and then you sit on hold, and then they transfer you, and then you're on hold, and then you just feel like they bounce you around a department and no one seems to be able to help you. So unfortunately, when going direct with large carriers, that seems to be the customer experience that most people have, which is unfortunate, but there are other ways. Another way that you can integrate with Teams is called embedded dialer, which means you have a third-party voice provider and Teams. Basically, you will use your VoIP web app as a side-loaded Teams app. So essentially, your VoIP app, so your voice app, is embedded in Teams. This means you will use your VoIP app to message internally, send SMS or text messages, and dial out calls. You will not need a phone system license with Microsoft Teams. So basically, as you can see on the slide, you can see that the voice provider's app is embedded in Teams. So really, you're using the voice provider's desktop app to make your calls, to send text messages, and then you'll switch over to the Microsoft Teams app for your or for your internal messaging and video platform. We don't typically do too much of this, just because the other 2 ways that we'll discuss tend to fit our customers' needs better. So the final 2 Teams integrations we'll discuss are Direct Routing and Operator Connect. We typically recommend either of these integrations since they tend to align best with how our customers plan to utilize Teams in their daily operation. Direct Routing is a full embedded native dialing experience, meaning you would use the Teams app for all dialing, internal messaging, and video calls. However, you will need to use your VoIP app for SMS messaging. With Direct Routing, a Teams phone license is required. So I know that is a lot of words for people who are not familiar with this. So basically, when you have your Teams pulled up on your computer, you'll take a look at it, right? You can use the dial pad to make calls off of Teams. You can send messages to your coworker, to your boss. You can do video calling, you can set up meetings, all within the Teams app. What you cannot do on the Teams app is you cannot text outside of your work, outside of your nonprofit. You will need to open up your VoIP app to send a text message. So that part would be separate. So like I said, for this integration, the direct routing, you are calling through Teams, doing all of the things through Teams except texting. Texting, you would Operator Connect. So Operator Connect is the closest solution to Teams Direct. There are few providers who can offer a true Teams experience, but those that can have an Operator Connect integration with Teams. This means you only use the Teams app. You will dial calls, send internal messages, voicemails, video conference, and send text messages via Teams. This solution, most customers elect to use headsets that are connected directly to their computer versus handheld desk phones. The reason for that is that there are limited options for physical desk phones when integrating with Operator Connect, since the service is more similar to a web messaging platform rather than traditional voice provider. So as I mentioned earlier, how a lot of the VoIP providers provide free physical desk phones when you have a service. When you use a provider who integrates with Teams via Operator Connect, which is a true Teams experience, they do not have the ability to discount the phones like other voice providers do. So they're unable to get those free phones, the free physical phones. However, if a physical phone is not important to you or your business, your nonprofit, you can simply plug a headset into your computer. You'd also have it on your phone because Microsoft Teams does have them as a mobile app. So that is one way you can use Microsoft Direct. So I know that was a lot of information. So we are going to pause. I know we discussed a lot, so I'd love to wrap up the floor to address any questions on the voice and the connectivity piece before going into a little bit more about Telecom Made Simple and what we do.
Alyssa, a lot of information, but a lot of good information. If you guys are anything like me, learned a lot. Had no idea about many of those topics. So feel free to drop in your questions. You can use the Q&A or you can use a chat box. A couple questions came up for me while you guys are dropping those in. Alyssa, could you recommend some of the VoIP providers that are popular for nonprofits?
Yeah, absolutely. So a VoIP provider that we use most commonly is BroadVoice. So BroadVoice, they tend to have really good rates for their nonprofits. And we are typically able to negotiate free phones with that service. Now, it all depends, right? If you're having one phone line, the chances of us being able to get free phones is not as likely versus if you have 10 phones. Okay, at that point, right, you're paying for more lines of service. It's more beneficial for them and you to have those VoIP phones. So it's definitely not a promise by any means, but that's a good one that we fall on for like a basic phone system. Really good pricing, really good customer service. We work with a partner over there and she's amazing. She's so helpful. She goes through everything with our customers. So what we do is we set up demos, and so we connect everyone directly with the provider and allow them to experience and see what that platform looks like by doing demos. But BroadVoice is a good one. Dialpad, if you're interested in voice recording and artificial intelligence. Von Edge, we've had success with.
GoTo, we've used GoTo, which is formerly
GoTo.
Jive.
Net to phone.
We've used Nextiva, NHC. We're carrier agnostic, so we really just try to see which provider is offering the best pricing for that given month. And that's who we, recommend, because, if you're good with VoIP, you're going to be good with VoIP. It's not rocket science. So but we do tend to side a little bit more when it's just for voice with, like Alyssa said, broad voice.
Thank you. We did have a question come through chat. What is your opinion for Zoom phone service?
Now, Zoom does not have a channel program, so that's not an area. So I'm not familiar with that, so I can't even speak to that. It's not an area that I can say good or bad. So if they don't have a channel program, which means they work with agents outside, third parties like us, I can't speak to it. I'm sorry. I wish I could.
Yeah, so that means you would need to go direct if you were interested in Zoom.
And I'm assuming that they would have like their own demos and trials and all of that, right?
I would
maybe
imagine
not.
that they would have that, but I've no idea, honestly, no idea. Like Christine said, unless we have a partnership with the provider, most providers, I would say more often than not, have a channel program, which means people like us, outside third party sellers, can sell on their behalf. But yeah, I'm not so sure about Zoom.
Gotcha. Can you share like the sweet spot in terms of what a good rate is for nonprofits?
For a phone or
For both. Let's say both.
So I would say for phones, I would say anywhere around for a simple basic phone system, it varies, right? Like I said, depends on how many phones you have, but I would say around $15 to $18 would be a good competitive rate compared to other voice providers. Because if you're looking at, right, the premise-based phones, most people we're seeing are being charged $25-$30 a phone. So if you can even cut that down, right, by a little bit, that's helpful. And then connectivity, that one really varies. I don't know, Christine, if you want to take that, but
the connectivity definitely varies by location. So you could be in an area, I have a customer in Alabama, it's not a nonprofit, and there's only one option. So they're paying through the nose. They were paying a lot more before I came in. They were paying $700 a month. I was able to get it at $238 a month, but that was for old technology. And it's, a T1, which isn't even a thing anymore. That's the type of connectivity. And but if you're in, say, Charlotte, where you have a lot of options, you have more negotiating power, right? So what we do is, I'll say, hey, well, so-and-so said they could do it for this. Why can't you do it for that? Or I don't want my nonprofit to pay a non-recurring charge. I want it waived. But if you only have one option, you don't really have very many, you don't have much power there. So it really does depend on location.
Yeah, and a non-recurring charge is just that like one-time upfront fee. A lot of times they use that for install fees, but like Christine said, right, we usually can get that waived. We just quoted a nonprofit and we were like, hey, we got another quote that came back with, they waived their installation. So I'm just letting you know, I'm actually about to go to so a lot of times nonprofits need to get 3 quotes, in order for a grant, which is what I'm doing right now for one of my nonprofits. And yeah, the one came back with no one-time charge. Okay. So that's like my baseline. And then the second one came back and had the one-time charge. We got him to take that off. So now we have 2 without that. And now we have my third one that came in with a $1,000 one-time charge. And so I have a call with him tomorrow. So when I call him tomorrow, I'm just going to let him know, hey, I'm just letting you know that your competitors both dropped it. So, because in
That's
order to be
amazing.
competitive with the other two at that point, who wants to pay $1,000 up front when the other two for the same, basically the
Mhm.
same service, were able to drop it. So just allows you to
Wow,
have options.
amazing.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I think that's it. But would love to hear more about Telecom Made Simple.
Yes. So I put this together just so that we can discuss, what the benefits are when working with a trusted advisor. So Telecom Made Simple, as Christine gave the description of what we do, we are a technology service distributor. So we'll just go through. So you'll get the best provider options for your company's needs because we will recommend the best telecom services available. We don't have to sell one person or one provider because we work with over 300. So we can really focus on what your needs are for service and be able to find the right provider to fit you. You only need to reach out to one person if you have any questions because we'll be the ones to help with pricing and to simplify the buying process. So you reach out to us and tell us what we need to find you, and then we're the ones reaching out to all the providers, getting pricing, and then pulling those quotes and sending them right to you. So just less of a hassle for you to go and reach out to whoever you need to reach out to and then follow up. Going direct with the provider often means dealing with a sales rep, with a trusted advisor like us. We have no quotas. So our recommendations are unbiased. I do not have to sell any one product over another. So that's a major benefit. I will never say, oh, this is the one product you have to go with because this is the last product I need to sell to hit my sales checklist. It's not a thing. We don't need to do it, and we won't do it because we don't have any quotas. We really are truly just trying to help and be a partner.
And when there's issues, if an end user has issues or questions or anything, we do our best to make things right. So, you're in technology, something's going to go wrong. And so we do everything in our power on the back end to make sure the providers, doing things to make it right, or if there's something that isn't exactly the way it should be, or if there's a mistake made, we do everything in our power to make it right because we truly care about our clients, because we don't just sign and drop our clients. They're our clients for the term of their contract. And even if they decide in 3 years to go with a different provider, we can still move them to another provider. We don't just sign and drop our people. We stay connected as their person throughout however the long they'd like to work with us, because we truly care about doing right by our people. And I don't think you stay in business in this industry as long as we have by not doing the right thing. And for us, to me, integrity is always on the forefront.
Yeah, I think you summed that up, pretty well. There's definitely a lot of benefits. Definitely a lot of benefits to working with a trusted advisor. And you get more of that personalized touch versus calling into the large corporations and not knowing who to contact if there is an issue. And we're always here if that does arise, right? When issues arise, you reach out to the provider and you open up a ticket and they don't resolve it. We're here to act as that escalation. So you open up a ticket, it does not get resolved, you let us know, and we'll go ahead and escalate that, get it figured out, right? Because we have that power. The providers know that, hey, they're working with this person who sells us, and if we don't help out their customers, they're not going to use us again. Just lights a little bit more of a fire, I would say, under their behinds, because they definitely want to make sure that we continue to sell their products. But in order to sell their products, they need to offer customer service and good support for whomever are already customers. But yeah, thank you so much for joining
Thank you.
our webinar this afternoon. We hope you found all of this information really helpful. And if you have any other questions, let us know. But we just wanted to put our contact information up here for you to have. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Great. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Alyssa, Christine, amazing, amazing information provided. Like they said, if you want to reach out to them and chat with them more or have more questions, feel free to reach out to them directly. You'll receive a follow-up email from me as well without the contact information, or you can email me the questions too, and I can make sure those get answered. Other than that, we are done for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you guys next time. Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye-bye.